Hello, Joe Simhart here for another edition of Cults in the Art Culture. It's May 30th, and I'm going to concentrate on this book I just finished, Useful Delusions. It's by Shankar, Vedantam, and Bill Mesler. It just came out in March 2021. And the book describes itself on the back, saying we are not just in a war with con artists, conspiracy theorists, and demagogues. We are in a war with ourselves. Our minds are not designed to see the truth, but to show us selective slices of reality and to prompt us toward predetermined goals. Even worse, they are designed to do all this while giving us the illusion that we are seeing reality, rather than seek to annihilate self-deception and all it represents. A better goal would be to think carefully about what it does and ask ourselves how we can work with it. Shankar Vedantam. So anyway, here's my reaction, which I'm probably going to submit for publication. So I said, obviously humans lie a lot and make stuff up, whether by intent, delusional and grandiose thinking, or repetition of biased influence games. The evidence provided by Shankar Vedantam and Bill Mesler in Useful Delusions confirms the obvious. Natural selection in human evolution does not care about the truth. It cares about success, survival, and what works. Whether we know it or not, we are hardwired genetically to act naturally, even as our social, moral, and ethical rules hold us to stop and think before doing so. Camouflage and deception rule in their survival games within the animal kingdom, so why not among the human realms? So I go into an example here to give some idea of how I see this. When I first traveled through India and learned to bargain for souvenirs, jewels, and trinkets in 1981, I soon understood the game. And the game is, if the merchant tricked me into paying 100 rupees for an item that I could have purchased for 10, then God or the universe willed it to be so in his mind. No guilt, it is merely business. A young Indian educated in an American college explained the bargaining game to me. So one of my final purchases before leaving India was a handcrafted cobra flute that a 10-year-old boy tried to sell me for 400 rupees outside of my hotel. I was not interested in the item, but the final offer that he gave me was one I did not refuse, 20 rupees. The bargain worked for him and for me. Now I could better imagine hypnotizing a cobra just like the fakers did. You know, they'd sway around like this and play the music to a cobra that comes out of a basket, and it entertains the audience. And of course, the sound of the flute has nothing to do with transfixing a cobra. The melody entertains and tricks the audiences into thinking the mesmerizing sound has something to do with it. Science reveals that cobras have little interest in flute music, but they will respond to the swaying of the instrument. The music attracts the audience, not the cobra. So this is kind of like religious music that is supposed to be praising God. The authors point out that humans operate between logos and mythos as the two guiding ways of thinking coined by ancient Greeks. Both the rational and the fanciful have value. The authors do not mention Plato, but Plato and the Republic called the mythos aspect the noble lie, which is necessary for a polis to function well. In other words, honoring the man-defined gods and an invented government makes sense because they create social and psychological order which benefits all. The natural orders of tooth and claw only do not work for human beings. The fear of the wrath of Zeus has value for the moral order. As young Catholics, we would say that angels must be bowling when thunder rolled in the clouds. Yes, it was a joke, but the joke functioned to affirm the reality of guardian and messenger angels that were part of the mythos of the church. On page 60, the authors point out that lots of scholars today find that mythos and logos are interdependent and necessary. Hardcore atheists have long and unsuccessfully argued that delusions about God and myths in religion are harmful to human development. Useful Delusions exposes the deep flaw in the atheist position that is not supported by science. Delusions can certainly be harmful and destructive when unhinged from virtue, morals, and rules of social order, but delusions can also be life-enhancing. For instance, religious people within the healthier functioning movements tend to live 10 years longer than non-religious folks. The placebo effect, as another example, is real and leads to positive thinking strategies that can be beneficial in health and business when used in reasonable ways. Unreasonable and dangerous positive thinking can be deadly when we consider newer emergent movements like Christian Science that doesn't believe in medicine, and the politics of New Thought, wherein a politician or voter can hold no negative thought about their political party. Strict totalitarian rulers will declare dissidents insane or criminal for saying something negative about the party. A centerpiece discussion in this book focuses on men who fell into con artist Donald Lowry's Church of Love, that he and a few others invented as a love letter cult. The cult activity reached its peak in the 1980s until Lowry was convicted of fraud and sent to prison in 1988. The church did not exist, but male participants believed it did through advertisements and personal letters sent to them by women called angels who lived in an idyllic commune called Chanda Za, a play on Shangri-La. The ersatz women who had been rescued from horrible abuse situations and lives of substance dependence, these were the ladies writing these letters, supposedly. They had lived a Spartan existence, submitted to the rule of the Mother Maria, who had mystic powers, and carefully leaked out their private lives of abuse while titillating the men to someday be together with them in the Chanda Za commune. Pictures of pretty women were carefully sent to correspondents to enhance the reality of the imagined relationships. The social structure resembled a Masonic club, with members achieving temple master status. Lowry and his assistants wrote and sent multiple copies of the same letters to thousands of correspondents who might send money and gifts as love offerings for the cause. The gifts were resold by Lowry's church that had no use for them. Lowry was a master manipulator who understood that you do not trick victims directly, but you do set up the conditions for victims to trick themselves. Lowry got extraordinarily rich before he was sent to prison. Talk shows like Geraldo made fun of the men who, after falling for such a silly scheme, dared to appear on television in the late 1980s during the publicized Church of Love scandal. Shankar Vedantam interviewed many of the former members for this book decades later and found another story. Many of the men continued to feel positive about their Church of Love experience, reporting how the angel that they fell in love with saved them from depression, loneliness, and even suicide. Of course, some were rightfully angry and felt foolish for sending so much money, but the point here is the same one we can apply to all religious and social inventions. Perhaps, quote, love for any time at all is worth the price you pay to fall. And that line comes from the song December Dream by the Stone Ponies, sung by Linda Ronstadt in 1967. So lapsed Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Mormons, the established religions, often have good things to say about their religious experience, despite crushing realizations about their religions being based in myths, delusions, and lies. Useful Delusions covers a lot of social scientific territory that I think the reader will enjoy. For example, the dance of complicity and deception works best when neither party acknowledges it. Self-deceptions have led to some of the crowning glories of civilization. Nation-states and languages are based on myths and social agreements, while languages are dialects that have armies. So anyway, every language is a dialect of that particular language. But if it has power and is the dominant form of language, then we call it a language, not a dialect. So the authors also look at terror management theory and something called mortality salience based on the insights of Otto Rank, Ernest Becker, and Sheldon Solomon to help explain why we need to deceive ourselves with useful delusions to make life and death feel more meaningful and tolerable. You can follow Shankar Vedantam. He is the host of Hidden Brain, a podcast, which I intend to listen to. But that's my idea of the book. I wholeheartedly endorse it, especially for people who are caught in that world between belief and science. There's no reason to feel caught between it. Both of these aspects of human awareness and behavior, between mythos and logos. They operate together, and they have to. It's our natural way of being. That's what makes us human. We just have to make the best of it. Thank you for listening.